Welcome to the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast, where you get multifamily investing made real. Learn from top players in the real estate investment world as they share their secrets with you and discover proven strategies on apartment investing that actually work. To learn more about Wheelbarrow Profits, visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. Now to your hosts, Jake and Gino.
Hello, everybody. This is Jake Decima, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, we're trying to make it happen today. I'm excited about today's guest. Let's go.
I'm super pumped about today's guest. Today we have the man, the myth, the legend, fixer Jay Decima. Jay is a real estate investor and author. And for myself, I've only read a couple of real estate books in my life, and Jay's book, Investing in Fixer-Uppers, really motivated me to get in the game, and I know Gino's a big fan as well. Jay, can you share your transition from working at the electric company to becoming a real estate investor? And I even remember parts of your book when you're discussing how when you first started, the kitchen table was the office. So can you give us share a little bit of that?
Sure, I can. And it was the telephone company.
The telephone company. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's right. Electric and telephone, they both need electricity. So, whichever, Actually, I started, with the phone company when I got back out of the Army. I had been drafted, and during the time of Korea. And when I got out, I already had played around with a little bit of real estate thinking. I didn't know quite what I wanted to do, but I knew that real estate, I had friends and I observed them, and they looked like they were pretty well off. And so real estate, you didn't take much convincing. And what I did, I moonlighted. I worked for the phone company, as a matter of fact, over 20 years with the phone company, and pretty much all the time I would buy bank take-backs, common REOs, houses for hardly any money down. And then I'd go out there and put my overalls on at night and sometimes work till midnight fixing these things up and build up a string of rentals. This was done primarily in the Sacramento, California area, the capital of Sacramento, where I was working most of that time, although I did move around a little. And every time I moved, I bought little houses. And so that's how I got started. It took me maybe 20 years of that to realize that when you have houses you don't pay very much down for, and you have most of it mortgaged, most of the debt mortgaged, that you can own 20 houses and you don't make any money for yourself. All you are is a non-paid landlord out plunging toilets. And so I thought to myself, I own 23 little houses around Sacramento, and if 2 of them were vacant, I had to put my telephone money into those things. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I must have read something wrong here or something, because, I thought with 20 houses, I ought to be up-and-coming guy in real estate. So what happened, I got to thinking about that, and I stumbled onto a guy that was investing in more than one unit on a lot. Now, at the time, this was a brand-new concept. I had no idea what he was even talking about. But back in the 40s, the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, typically a family might buy a plot of land, might be in the city, might be a half-acre lot. And as time went by, the old man who had a typical job would build a duplex in the back thinking this will be good for our retirement. We'll build this and we'll have retirement income from the duplex. And that worked so well that he bought a unit built a unit above the garage, a granny unit above, so you have a lot of these little properties just about in every state. I made a lot of real estate clubs talked at a lot of real estate clubs in the 80s and 90s, and everywhere I went I found these. So there's no shortage of these. The shortage is of the people who who sort of specialize or do them. Why did I do that? Well, I found that, first of all, you eliminate about 98% of the competition because nobody wants 6 junky houses on one lot. Investors want to go out and buy middle-grade houses primarily, about 95% when they hear about real estate. And what this did, this reduced the unit cost down. In other words, the unit itself, when you divide the total purchase price by the number of units, you found you bought a unit which might have cost $75, you bought it for $40. Well, now the numbers and the rent starts to work because we find that the customer that rents these types of places is the same customer that would rent a single house, but then the ratio there is so much better for the investor. And so you don't have near as many places to tend to when you got 6 on one property. That was a big, huge turning point for me right there. Up until that point, no cash flow very much, except when 100% of my property was rented. But when I started doing these multiples, I found that cash flow was pretty easy to come by, especially when I bought properties that didn't look so good, properties that I could fine-tune as or fix up and raise rents. Typically, these were under-rented properties because of the way they looked, and I made a kind of a specialty of buying from retired type owners who if they were ring-wise and knew a little bit about real estate and the benefits, most of them wanted to carry paper or carry the mortgage for income themselves. This is not generally done in the single-family house business. And these people wanted an income, and they realized you can make 3 times as much if you carry for 20 years than you can if you sold for cash. They're on to that because they had operated these properties. So I found that little niche, and I was off to the races with that. And most of my books and writing, I understand everything about real estate and the investing side, but I'll tell you what, there's nothing like these little it's the same concept as big apartments. The unit cost is cheaper. You got one roof with a 2-story building. The unit cost is cheaper and the rent stays the same. You make money. It's that same concept with one exception is when you buy these older ones, you can get them very, very economically. You can, because they're a fish in the wrong pond is what they are, and many times, as far as in towns or cities, they're in the wrong zoning. And however, that doesn't make any difference to an investor. It's the IRS says it's the use of the property. They don't care anything about zoning. Mm-hmm. And so as long as you have residential usage in these areas, a C lot or a commercial lot makes little difference to anybody as long as they're kept for that and not you don't break up that renting chain. So anyway, that was a huge turning point for me, and that's what brought me to the party.
I think the other thing, Jay, is that you're not competing as much either because you're talking about the apartments, but you're not competing with all those guys going after the big apartment buildings.
No, in relationship to the big apartments, my kind of units, you might just picture a little driveway taking off of a typical city street, maybe a little 12-foot driveway, asphalt driveway, and you drive up. There's 3 little houses, a couple of duplexes on one side of the street, and 3 or 4 little on the other. So up the driveway. So these are semi-private. You can have little yards. Now, with respect to the apartment living versus mine, people like mine 10 times to 1 because I can offer little yards and privacy. When you gussy these things up and keep them up, keep new carpets, keep them attractive, you'll rent these 10-to-1 times the guy trying to pass off a unit in what we call barracks or some of these start-out type apartments. And also, I had in mind, as it developed over the years, there are two kinds of people I rent to, and that became a science for me. I rent to the young people, say 20 to 45, and then I rent to seniors. Those folks in the middle now, for the most part, are buyers. Those people may rent your house, but they want to be buyers. Mm-hmm. I don't want buyers. I want you in my places. I want you there till you make me rich renting from me, because rent money coming in every month, that's exactly what it will do for you.
Jay, you know what attracted me to your books when I first started out? The ease with which people can get into real estate. Because I always hear students and investors say, I don't have the money to get into real estate. Can you go into owner financing and how people can get into this business without any money of their own?
Well, the money, of course, is always, that's always something that stands between people and their goal as far as real estate investing is concerned in their own mind. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate, but beginners, of course, do not have really very much knowledge. Therefore, it's like they're looking at a whole new world out there and have no idea. When you have a little experience and sophistication, that is the time when these deals with maybe little money, I do a moving up, I trade notes that I've done with I'll do a property and sell it maybe, and I'll have a note. I'll use that note to move up into the next property. I do what is called lemonade offers. You probably read that in my books. A lemonade is just like the word implies there. It's sugar and lemons, the sugar being the cash, of course. So what we've got is getting into property. You've got to consider two things. You need just a little bit of knowledge here because, it's a big world out there, and if you don't have a little, you don't know what to do first. But you also need another component here. You need a person selling who would rather have what you're offering than what they own now. Many people sum this up as just motivation. But really, you've got, and that's why I alluded to the elderly people. I like to buy from people who own property. Let me say the two favorite places I buy property that is run down, being managed by maybe out-of-town owners who don't know what's going on. And property managers, I don't want to say anything bad here, but it's not theirs, and we know that owners take care of properties, and somebody else don't do as well. We all know that. And as a result, with older properties, they go downhill quickly, much quicker than newer stuff. So properties that have run downhill and the rents have, lost pace as well. And so I generally find properties that are under-rented, and they don't look very good, I might drive by there, and the guy says, do you see that pit bull looking out the kitchen window? And I said, oh, whoa, that's not a pit bull, that's the guy's wife. But no, but properties that don't look so good, you know what I'm saying? 4 or 5 jacked up.
We call these mom and pops.
4 or 5 jacked up cars in the yard. I lust and crave after those. and tenants hanging out the side windows with tattoos. That's my specialty, or the Hells Angels, or somebody like that.
Animal House.
That's what it looks like. And see, I have found, here's the deal on that. Those are all what I call short-term problems. And I want to exchange those short-term problems for long-term benefits, which is seller financing and quite a number of other little things we can talk about here. But seller financing is the king of all, because with seller financing, you can do a lot of things. And I might just interject this right now, that this new legislation, what is it, Frank Dodd, I guess it is, people bring that up at my seminars and one thing, and oh my God, we're worried about. I said, let me just ease your mind here, fellas. Frank Dodd applies up to 4 units. When you hit 5, you can just trash Frank Dodd. It doesn't even apply. Many people don't know that. So we have a clean bill of health there, and of course they haven't enacted much of that legislation, since it was written. But on the other hand, it does scare a lot of people because of the things they could do there, and that involves seller financing as well. Now, the seller financing issue, seller financing has to be sort of designed. You generally have to work with people. One thing you have to do is prove that you're going to pay them the money. People are worried about their security. So, I've written chapters in many books about what I do. I'm always willing to show my financial statement, a list of my properties, my profit and loss. Before we close any escrow, I allow them to come to the escrow conference room and go through my papers till midnight if they'd like, and on those papers are listed all of the people I make payments to currently with mortgages where I pay. And if they'd like to call and check out how old Jay's paid, they can. It's a funny thing. I make that standing offer. And yet, 1 out of 10 is the only, 1 out of 10 will take me up on it. I guess I've convinced the rest of them that since I'll do it, there's no need to further check. So I'll waste their time in the. So anyway, but you have to prove when you're dealing with older sellers. I started to say here, I got a little mixed here. I said I wanted to tell you the 2 different types of properties. One was the unsightly property, and the next is buying from people who want to retire. Those are my 2 specialties. And in this latest book that I've written here, The Fisherman, I've kind of designed a plan around 6 locations and 40 units, which will do any investor a whole lot of good and make them very wealthy. But that's 40 units at 6 locations, so you're not out racing. Say you bought one a year. Could you buy one a year? Could you buy one every 18 months? You see, we're in no hurry. We're looking for quality here in our investments, not a quantity. Now, when I started out, like every investor, I got to get to 10. I got to get to 20. I got to get to 100. That's no goal to have, although we all start out thinking that, because that doesn't necessarily equate to money in your pocket, you see. So those 2 places, buying the rundown, dirty, ugly things and getting a good price break there, and then buying from older sellers who want to retire. Maybe they've operated this property for 40 years now and they just can't physically do it anymore, and so, or they lose one of the family members. And those people are people that will generally work with you. That is where I get so much of the seller financing. And both cases, because in the first case, sellers who have run-down property are not doing very well financially. Otherwise, the property wouldn't look like that if they understood the game. So they don't. So from a financial standpoint, there are people who are pretty motivated to sell. And so I watch for those. Those are my specialty. Those are what I look for.
So, Jay, where do you find them? Where do you find those kinds of sellers?
They're all over, really. They really are. My suggestion, this is kind of a part that, where do we find them? Well, out in California, for example, where I live, there. If you were to take I-5, which is a major highway right through the state from San Diego to Oregon border, if you got off on just about any freeway other than going towards a seacoast, Now, down in San Diego and San Francisco and L.A., you got a lot of high-priced stuff. That's not for my people. You can't get started there. You don't have enough money. So my take on that is if you can smell salt water, move back 75 miles.
That's a good suggestion. I like that.
Yeah. So what you've got to do is get in the what I call into the Johnny Lunch Bucket type houses. You've got to get into your Modesto, your Stockton, your Sacramento, and these areas, and they're just full of them. I mean, they're in the downtown area, and they're in the rural areas, and so they're all over. So you see, the problem is nobody has made themselves, dedicated themselves to going out and finding just this type. I used to take when I was active, as you guys know, I'm kind of old now, so I'm sort of on the downhill slope. But I used to take my broker out, and we'd go to lunch. But in the meantime, we'd get a yellow pad, and we'd go list all the properties around my town, Redding. Redding is a poor town of 90,000, low income. It's up in the northern part of California, and up here. We believe if you can get up in the morning and dress yourself, you really don't need a purpose. So up here, we got a lot of people not doing anything. So no big jobs. We lost our logging, and therefore there's just, the rents are low compared to, and they match the jobs. 250 miles away in the city of San Francisco, of course, the rents are 8 times what they are in my town. But it isn't about the dollar number. It's about the ratio. It's about the unit versus how much that unit earns. That's what it's about. And one of my measures is a rent-to-value ratio. In the old days of real estate, we used to call it the 1% rule. That was another way to measure a $100,000 house ought to rent for $1,000 a month. That's a 12% return on your money per year. That's not bad. And in my kind of explanation, that would be a 1.0 ratio, a 1% ratio, actually 12% return per year. Now, if you can get places where you buy multiple units and get the price down, say, to $40,000 a unit, and it rents for $600, now you're starting to talk. You're really starting to talk, because that is far greater than this 1.0. This is a 1.5. And so 18% a year. Now, you get these kind of numbers. This is where the money is in the real estate. It's those ratios. It isn't about the looks. It's about what it does for you and how you operate this property economically. See?
Jay, was that broker you took? His name Fred, the one you alluded to previously?
Fred Quigley. I write about Fred
a lot. And so talk about that relationship with the broker, because a lot of guys think brokers aren't that important. Jake and I have found that making that broker relationship is vital to investing. What are your opinions about a broker relationship?
Gino, I completely agree with you wholeheartedly. Do I need a broker to do deals? The answer is no. However, when you get beyond, just a few houses, you find that there's not enough time in the day to do business. You begin to need some extra help. Now, having said that, the regular broker across the country, by and large, they're house-selling people. They take somebody out in the back of their Mercedes, put them in the back seat, and the first thing they want to do is get them emotionally involved with the property they're trying to sell them. Now, that's house selling. That is not what we do. So there are a few people who sell apartments and that sort of thing. But this little specialty that I have, I spent 4 years training for. I've had 2 brokers in 50 years. Merv was my first one. He passed on. There's A dead broker, of course, is not much use, so you have to move on and get another one. That was Fred. And so both of those were excellent guys, but I had to actually teach them. I said, don't bring me deals that, for example, I don't want to look at houses. I don't want to look at stuff that's new. I don't want to look at all, commercial. I want to look at these junky, 6 little houses on a lot. When you find those, if you find me a building with 12 units, because I've converted little old hotels into permanent living. I've done some of that. I've converted the old motor lodges 3 or 4 times in my life. Those make great senior complexes. The motor lodges were the old forerunners to motels or hotels today, little cottages with a kitchen where people would take a trip back in the 40s, carport between the buildings, and they'd stay for a week on a vacation and live in the little studio unit. Now those, actually, you gut those out, make them efficient. Those are great little senior units when you find a configuration like that. So I've done those, but specifically for seniors who don't require a lot of square footage. And, I tell people, I've shown people on my seminars, I said, look at this place, there's 200 square feet, 180 square feet, but it's for seniors. I said, I make more than Macy's does square footage-wise, but nonetheless, it's designed, all they do, they don't own a car, they just have a TV and a poodle. That's all I'm geared up to provide there, and give them a nice spacious lawn and security. They're just happier than a lark. And so you got to know who I made mention of this earlier, knowing who you're going to rent to, your customer. You don't want to run a dress shop in town where all the ladies are wearing red, but you decide to buy blue dresses. This is the wrong approach. You see what is needed out there and fill a need. Don't try to create one, fill one. And that's kind of what I've done with my rental business here. And it works fine. Now, back to this idea of finding them. Friends, you're going to have to go out. You're going to have to park the car. If you want to do this in the downtown areas where it's congested, you're going to go down through the avenues. There are some signs that you might be on to something. For example, when you come to a big old house facing a street in a grown-up area with mature trees, you can't see anything, but you see a post there with 6 mailboxes on it. You got to decide either that guy gets a lot of mail or something else is going down there. So maybe let's trip up the driveway. You can't see. The trees are blocking. So let's tiptoe up that driveway and do it carefully and not get caught. And I'll just bet you'll find some units back in there in the back. Telephone wires. When you see 12 telephone wires going over to a 2-story house in the street, that guy's either got an awful lot of phones or there's something else going on there, right? Uh-huh. So I would bet those wires hit the front of the house and they go around back and service other little deals. Now, some of the properties, you might say in a rural area, would be more obvious. You go out there, you'll notice that the paint job on the buildings is all the same. Well, usually adjacent owners or different owners, what would the odds that they'd paint the trim and paint their buildings the same as their neighbor?
I think we need to rename this Investor Jay. Investigator Jay.
Well, that's what I am. And if you've read the book, you know that I've patterned myself after Columbo. Remember Columbo?
Yes.
Columbo was a TV detective in an old wrinkled coat. And you need to do this because we're going to do a lot of investigating. When you take the model in my latest book here, The Real Estate Fisherman, and when you go through that, if you follow that, you can make yourself pretty well off financially. You got 20 chapters that follow there, but that's talking 40 units at 6 locations. You don't have you don't have to be in a hurry, but you need to make sure the things that we talk about are there in place before you buy. You learn, as you get more sophisticated in this business, you find that there's a lot more ways to make money than by renting units or by selling for a profit. Think about that for a moment.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I wanted to ask you. Your model has basically stayed the same over the last 30, 40 years. What have you seen changed in the real estate market, in the real estate sector over those last 30, 40 years?
In my particular specialty?
Yep.
Nothing.
Nothing
has changed. In my now that's in my specialty.
Uh-huh.
And I have blinders on when I give you that answer. We're not talking about the industry. We're talking about rental people. Young people are going to rent places. Seniors are going to rent places. They can't do any different. If you can provide those places, you'll be the king. Now, if anything has changed, it would be a reduction of those units, which are torn down by cities and this kind of thing like that. So those become more valuable. My best money-making model is a 650-foot square 2-bedroom house with 1 bathroom, inside, of course. Generally, it takes a while to catch on to that one, but you'd have more respect for me than that to put one outside. Anyway, that's my basic model, and that model.
No rosebuds, Jay. You don't have rosebud out back. Rosebud's the outhouse.
Yeah, we have Porta Potty and Johnny's, and there's a truck runs around my town, and it's got a little printing on it. It says "Ours runs downhill." It's one of these big pumping tankers, and I love that, But so that's the house. Now, would anybody ever be in the market to buy a family home like I've just described? No, they wouldn't. They'd tear it down. So we're into a specialized market. I want you to come to rent my property, and I want you to stay there for your whole life, and I want your kids to take over when you die. I call this womb-to-tomb investing.
That'd be sweet if you can get it, right?
Well, I've had very close to that. It's rare, but I have had very close to it. I've had, people that have stayed 30 years. So, guess what? When somebody stays 30 years, they probably paid your house off 2 or 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
When you figure out what this, how much it's valued in relationship to the 5 others around it or so. Now, I didn't get into this multi-thinking business, the first 20 years of my career. But when I got into that, it restored my faith because I started to make some money. I had a little something to jingle in my pocket. When you're working down in a trench and and you're bailing water or something out, you can't look up and see what's going on and expand. You're too busy with what you've got. That's kind of how I was with my houses in Sacramento. I owned all these little rentals. I had an 8-hour telephone job. I'm out fixing repairs in the evening or weekends, no vacations. All the money that I had went to working on these houses instead of a trip to Disneyland with the kids. And so you're not very popular with your wife and family when you do this, and you don't make any money. And you substitute working on houses for family vacations. You better be able to have your wife on your side.
That's a great point.
And and what I do, I've run seminars for years, taught seminars for years, and my main thrust is to get people to cash flow as quickly as possible. There is no quicker way to cash flow. Now, I'm talking about average people who have average jobs. They never have any extra money left over, I mean, they're using it to live on. So basically have no money, and they want to get into real estate. Those people, don't have a lot of surplus. You can't make mistakes and spend a whole lot on a down payment and then upkeep the property and pay mortgage payments and then not make any money in return. I mean, that's very discouraging. And when you do that, you say a young couple does that, pretty soon the wife says, I used to think you were fairly smart investing, but now I've changed my mind. All the money we could have used for vacation, you're putting on a new cooler or you're putting floors in or new toilets. My God, when does it ever end, And so it's kind of discouraging. So if you can get somebody to make a little money on their first 2 deals or so, it don't have to be very much. Just a little bit, and they'll be bragging at every cocktail party they go to. They'll exaggerate, but, I mean, they're very tickled with a little money.
And then they're hooked. Hey, Jay, you're talking about fixing things up. What kind of things do you fix to add value quickly?
You fix pretty much what shows and glitters. Obviously, paint is a big changer, but yards are an awful big changer. I talk about a lot of times when I buy rundown properties that look like a junkyard. There's weeds, sometimes up 2 feet high, jacked up cars and whatnot. Do you realize that when you get in there and you clean this property up and get down to the dirt, and then you start watering that dirt, that that weeds will actually turn into pretty much something like lawn if you start cutting it and watering it every day? And you'll end up with a nice little, they're still weeds, of course, but you groom them and they become lawn-looking weeds. And so you want yards. People make fun of my little 3-foot picket fences. Picket fences are very charming. Very charming. It reminds everybody of another time in history, really. When life was a little slower. It just has that effect on your mind, and it has the effect on renters' mind and buyers' mind as well. See, I can't compete with brand new buildings when I have 70-year-old buildings. There's no way I can compete. I mean, the amenities of the later buildings and so forth, I can't compete. What I can beat the socks off of them in is the charm factor. They don't have mature trees, mature shrubs, which I trim up and make look nice. They don't have all that going for them, and I do. I can create charm. So the first thing you do is drive up on your Honda there and get out and clean property up. That's the first thing I do. When I arrive at a junkyard property and become the owner, the first thing I do is start cleaning everything up, getting all the junk. I don't even go inside. I don't even want to be bothered. I cut trees, trim trees, get shrubs going, start watering the bare ground till I get some weeds growing and turn green. I do stuff like that. I'll start a paint job on the outside. That'll be maybe my next move. I don't go inside unless somebody moves or something like that. Typically, when I go into a property that's run down and a troubled property, like, say, 6 or 7 units, when I become the new owner and go out to introduce myself, which just getting on the property, they'll come over and see you. I don't necessarily make it a point to bother them. But they'll come out. Typically, 2 or 3 of those won't be paying rent, so they'll just probably up and leave, or you'll have to evict 1 or 2 of them. So you will have an inside job before long. But I work on the outside. I work on the looks. People make both renting and buying decisions driving by the property 15 miles an hour in their car. That's where that decision is made. And it's made in about less than 10 seconds. If they see a bunch of dogs, a bunch of trash, tattooed guys sitting on the front porch, they don't even stop the car. They don't
But you
even
do.
stop.
You go in and buy at that point.
I go in and buy it. Yes, sir. Yes. I tell the funny story about Hells Angels or the bikers. In California, we have the Hells Angels, and they're the bad biker gang. I just lust and crave when I find a unit with those guys, because those guys, have torn the property up. They got bikes, Harleys in on the living room rug there and so forth, and stripped down, taking them apart. And so they just tear our property right up. But again, that owner, he's scared to death of them, and he'll make me a deal. I'll buy that property for half what it would be otherwise. And I know full well with my landlording skills, I'll have no trouble. I won't even have to talk to any Hells Angel biker, because I'll just simply evict him. And we haven't had, and I know this as a landlord, that no Hells Angel, when you evict them, they call it an unlawful detainer out here, that's the eviction, no Hells Angel has ever showed up in a court to defend himself, so they'll default by non-showing, and then the sheriff will put them out 5 days later. So I'll never have made any contact with those people at all. They don't even know who owns the property, other than they were evicted by the new owner. They'll be shooting down the highway, about 5 or 10 minutes before the marshal comes to put them out. But I've never had one show up and tell the judge, Fixer Jay, we were living there peacefully in his house, and even though we haven't paid rent for 7 months, he wants us out. We don't understand it. They won't go anywhere near a courthouse. Half of them have murdered their mother 3 times already, so they won't go anywhere near a judge. And so those are deals, but you have to have a little knowledge. That would scare the pants off a first-time buyer, so we won't do that with our first-time guys. But the ugly properties attract me, because when it's ugly, something is wrong. And when it's ugly, I stand a real good chance of being able to get my way with the seller, because he don't have very many options besides me. He don't have many options. And when I find that he's got a telephone number that's a long ways away from my town or where I'm investing, that's better, because he may not even have seen his property lately and what a pigsty it is. So I'll start communicating with him, and chances are maybe make a deal down the line. So that's this detective work I talk about. Also, a great part, as I became more educated in this stuff, I found that buying back debt, that is a tremendous profit-making opportunity in this business. This does not happen pretty much anywhere else except in the business I'm talking about. And by the way, the business I'm talking about, I'm not locked in that I have to be over 5. I've owned less. I've owned 3 units and that kind of thing. But my model of over 5 units fits so many things that that are beneficial to me. First of all, no bank would loan on my kind of property. You picture a junk property, 70 years old, 6 houses up a driveway. The banker, if I walked in to see the banker, he'd throw up. He wouldn't even want to discuss it with me. That, first of all, number one, the bank forms 1 to 4 units, that's a house, or up to a 4-plex or 4 units. When you go beyond that, you're into commercial lending, shopping centers, the Trump Tower, and stuff like that. Well, obviously what I'm bringing in, 6 junky houses, doesn't fit the Trump Tower. So commercial lending, those are tough loans to get. So basically, a person who has this junk kind of property like we're referring to cannot go to a bank and get any money, and neither can I. So what does that do? If he wants to sell, he's got to carry paper, right? There's no other game in town. So that's the reason I like that, because it forces us into the paper thing. That's why I have so much paper. Now, this paper business, I didn't realize that in the beginning. This paper has become a big money maker over the years for me, because these types of properties I buy are little income properties, and a lot of owners will do what I call churning. They'll fix it up, and then they want to sell it, right? When they do, they'll carry some paper. The new guy buys, he comes along, they mark it up a little, he buys, more paper is carried. You can find, sometimes I arrive with one of these properties and I find there are 4 or 5 of these little private notes on one property, the kind I'm talking about, okay? Then I begin to negotiate with the people that hold those notes. I begin to send them out Christmas letters. Dear Mabel, I've been making payments to you on your property now for almost a year, and here it is Christmas time again. As usual, about Christmas time every year, I try to take my savings and pay one of my note holders a little cash money, because most people think about cruises, family Christmas tree, the in-laws, and can use cash around the Christmas season. Now, I don't have the full $60,000, which is the balance of your note, but if you could take $39,000, I can have that the week before Christmas on your shelf.
And are you successful this way? Do people really take that?
Anybody will be successful. Yes,
that's huge savings, Jay.
That's huge. Now, stop and think about an example I've already cited for you, a rundown, junky-looking property, and I get a good deal on that property and the seller carries. Now, what would the seller, and generally it will be the least amount of cash. I will design something with the least amount of cash. He says to me, well, I want $40,000 down. I says, I agree. I'll give you 40. It will consist of $10,000 cash, my DeSoto pickup, my travel trailer, my Arnold Schwarzenegger weightlifting set, and a fishing
No, don't give away the Arnold set.
And there's your 40. That's called a lemonade offer. Why in the world would anybody take that? Because he can't do any better. The only reason he'll take that is he can't find a guy that'll give him any better deal. So he takes it. Now, what would he have rather had when I did this transaction? First of all, he's got a property he can't handle. It shows. That's why I'm buying it cheap. So what is he short of on the day I buy the property? He's short of money. These guys that run properties like this are always short of money. They're not good managers. They're always
Christmas
short.
Time, he's going to be jumping at your
He's going to
offer.
be jumping. He wants more money down. He can't get it, but when I come back to him, he jumps at 50% of his note value. Jumps at it. He needs it. He'll be broke again in another year.
So, Jay, what do you say to students that come to you and say, I don't have the money to get into real estate? What do you say to them?
Well, if you don't have any money and you're also brand new at this, you're going to have to roll with the punches. You could be a person who could root out a good deal and bring somebody on with the cash and share it with them. If you it don't have to be a formal one. It could just be two buddies. I would recommend that you have an agreement and paperwork done, but you don't have to be a formal partnership for tax purposes. But But do that in the beginning. That's typically called a bird dog or something if you don't have any cash. How about, if you find, if you were in the single-family house. Now, this conversation has been about my specialty, but, I'm a single-house guy. I think the best investment in America is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, with 1,600 feet. But new guys can't buy those. Because there's no cash flow for you. You have an 80% mortgage, there goes all your cash. So that's the wrong thing to buy first. Buy those later when you have money in your pocket. That's the best security in America right there. But you can't do it in the beginning. But however, getting back to a single family, let's say you got a guy that wants to start out and he sees a single family vacant house with weeds growing up and a broken window in front. He might investigate that house, find out that the owner took a job 75 miles away and has got double payments, a mortgage on that house, plus he's got a mortgage on his new one, or certainly he's got rent. He's tried to sell it, hasn't been able to. I come along and I tell him, I find out about it, I look it up, I find out who owns it, and I write him a little letter and tell him that I would be more than happy to take care of that house, cut the grass, paint the thing, and even get it rented, do anything for an option to purchase it.
Nice.
Okay.
For an option. He wants to sell it. I'll even give him a fair price if he'll give me decent terms, if he can. If I have to take over
what kind of
a
terms
mortgage.
do you usually get on that?
Say that again?
What kind of terms are you typically getting on something like that?
Well, it depends. If there's an existing mortgage there and he's making payments, I'll have to take that subject to, right? I'm not going to do no refinancing. I'll take it subject to, and somebody will say, well, that's not legal. Yeah, well, I'm not a policeman. I'm an investor. And you can run that by somebody that cares. But I'll take it over and begin making payments. And then the part of his equity, if there's equity there, then I will give him very weak terms. I might give him 2 or 3 or 4%, or I might do. You don't have to pay interest. You could say, your equity here is $60,000. I'm going to give you $6,000 on January for the next 10 years. That's it. What about something like that?
That's being creative. Yes, thinking outside the box. And that's why I love and one of the guys that just got out of real estate school will say, Jay, you must have not heard about imputed interest. Yes, I have heard about imputed interest. I know all about imputed. The IRS guys in the field don't even understand it, so they don't enforce it either. So there we are. We have it on the books. It's like spitting on the sidewalk. There's a law against that. But I've never been.
That's because you're in California. They're putting the handcuffs on everybody for everything, right?
We are in a liberal state where if you can be a landlord in New York, California, or probably Boston, you can be a landlord anywhere. And by the way, landlording is a part you must learn to do this business. If you can't handle people and run your properties, you'll be in the wrong business here. But this business will make you rich. I mean, it'll take a country boy with just a regular W-2 job and make a millionaire out of you. Maybe not the size of Donald Trump, but a junior millionaire, okay? Enough for as long as you're going to be on the planet, right?
Right.
Yep.
What about the Real Estate Fisherman, Jay, the book that you just came out with? Can you tell us a little bit about that and how people can get a hold of you?
Well, that book is it has not got into the shelves of Barnes because I self-published.
Gotcha.
And it is on Amazon. It's selling really good on Amazon, and you can get a hold of me. I have them myself, fixerj.com, or you can, that's the website there, fixerjay.com, FIXERJAY, .com, or you can call me on my 800 line, 1-800-722-2550. And that line is my company, which is KJ Publishing, and we'll hustle you one out. Now, that book is probably, I designed that book to sort of, for the new guy to be able to see his way through this maze of techniques and whatnot, and try to simplify it, and built this model with the 40 units. With the 6 different locations and of course, the creative type financing that I suggest, and how to evaluate costs and get yourself, you know, if you don't know anything, this is a great book for you, because somebody says, well, you write 3rd grade level because that's probably all the smarter you are. Well, it may be. I can take that, but
we might be in the same club then, Jay.
People understand that, don't they? Don't they understand that?
That's right. I think Jake and I are in the 4th grade, so maybe we're one grade ahead of you, but not by much. So
you brought this up at the first part of the program about my chapters on seller financing, and you brought the simplicity, or how I explained it. You're not the first one that's told me that. I had a caller, one of my subscribers. I write a newsletter. He said I went to a weekend class on seller financing. He said he was telling me from his car driving back home after 2 days at a. He said, I should have read chapter 6 and 7 in your book. He said that was far better than this whole weekend seminar.
That's because you're a real guy and you're out there doing it, Jay, where a lot of these guys might be working for somebody else or whatever, but you've really done it. You've been out there in the trenches, and that's the difference, and that's why we like you versus a lot of the stuff that's out there.
Well, exactly. And that's the way I am. I learned this business basically from 2 old brokers when I was just a kid. One of them I didn't even like. He was really ornery. But I bothered him, and every time I asked him, he said, why do you want to talk now? But I kept pestering these guys because I knew they knew something, and I was very interested in learning, so I just put up. One of them was a pretty good guy. The other one was really ornery, but those 2 guys, were very, very helpful. They didn't know everything, but they were, single person brokerages. They did everything in their own brokerage, and they understood this stuff. And we all learn on the backs of each other, do we not?
That's right.
I mean, one generation, and you know what's going on out there today with all these high-priced seminars and these flip guys on A&E and all this kind of stuff, and selling packages for $40,000 or so. I mean, it's absurd, really. I mean, it's just like, it's like Trump University. It's the same thing, it's that same deal. And
you could buy a lot of Fixer J houses with $40,000, I have a feeling.
You could buy a ton of them. You could buy a ton of them. And a guy with no money, a lot of times, can work a deal where somebody wants $20,000. I remember $20,000. I says, is there that much money in the world? My God, is there that? There's a chapter in this Real Estate Fisherman that deals with a property called Cherry Street. That shows, it's one of the first chapters, I forget which one, but it shows what a $20,000 investment did for me over a long period of time with 6 units. And I ended up, I'm just going by memory now, that property took in over a period of many years now, including the financing done by me. I finance things when I sell, by the way. But that property took in $2.5 million for a $20,000 down payment. Now,
how do you calculate that ROI?
Well, of course, somebody said, well, didn't you have any expenses? I said, yes, I have expenses, yeah. But you might guess out of $2.5 million, there was probably a little left over for me, wouldn't you think?
I would think
nice
so.
Little bit of profit mixed in there.
Yeah,
too,
there's
right?
a little bit of profit in there. And so when you get in this business and you begin to learn about it, that's what this book it'll open your eyes to what I call profit bulbs, different ways to make money in real estate besides renting and besides selling for a profit. And these profit bulbs, certainly owner financing is a big one, but there are others in there. And it's kind of like my 6 units up the driveway that I own are, you might say, my basic tree or skeleton, to which I will begin adding these different profit bulbs as I go along, different ways to make money with the same property. And so as you read through this, it kind of opens your eye. You guys have read some of this stuff already, I know, in other books, because people read my books and they say, is this one like the last one? Well, it's what I do. This is my 50 years investing, so yes, it is. I may explain something, the same thing, but a different way to you. How many times do you read a book over and over and you don't get a part of it, especially a tax book, and then on the sixth reading, oh, I see what they mean now. You've read it slightly different. Somebody came at it another way, and you understand it. That's kind of what these books do. And so reading these books will give you quite an education, but you still have to start with one step forward at a time. And, like eating an elephant, the elephant is just too big by itself, so one bite at a time is all we can do, but we'll get the job done.
Yeah, I like it.
So you can do stuff with very little down, but the first thing you need to you certainly need to know values or have a good idea. You can't, you'll go to real estate agents, get a little help from them, listen to what they have to say. You'll read rental ads. You'll know how much rent people pay in certain areas of your town. You need to know value numbers for yourself. So this is all done manually. It's not, these people want to do stuff today on computers and never get in the car. That, my friends, I'm afraid is not going to get the job done. It just really isn't, because anything that goes on a computer is public information. And by the time the public knows about something, they drive the price up, and only the dogs are left on the list. So you've got to get out there and initiate action. You need to learn about what we're looking for, go identify this stuff, play with numbers and fiddle with it a little bit, and then meet with some real owners and talk about it.
We're running a little long right now, but that is such great advice, and it has been an honor to speak with you today, and I just really do appreciate everything.
Well, I appreciate Gino, Jake. I appreciate talking to you guys, and I've been doing the talking here. You guys,
that's because this has been a wealth of information here. We don't want to interrupt any of this. This is a real estate gold here. It's not our place to interject. So.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and my guy Dan that works with me, who's been very successful, in this business. Started with me about 26 years or so ago, set it up for us here. I'm old-fashioned. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I thought it was something like a split pea or something, but I haven't been brought up into the modern age yet.
But we'll do. We're not the slickest with it either, but we'll do our best to pull you in, Jay. So,
Jay, thanks a lot for the call today. I really appreciate it. I had a great time listening, not talking. That's what I like to do. I like to listen, and you're a wealth of information. I love your books. I would tell everyone who's listening to the podcast, go out and buy his books, because you can always think outside the box. When you think about, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time, well, you know what? It's not the money that makes you rich. It's the ideas and it's the creativity. And I'm just glad that you were here to share your story with us. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, both of you, and thanks for taking the time out and listening to me.
You got it. Thanks, Jay.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
We trust that you enjoyed the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast. Visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. See you next time when Jake and Gino share more of their investing secrets with you.